Are you, Anna? Welcome to Never Again Is Now, a podcast about anti Semitism. I'm Evelyn Marcus.
And I am Phyllis Zimbler Miller.
It is a devastating year after October 7th, with Israeli hostages still held in Hamas terror dungeons. Now, a special exhibit on the murderous assault on the peaceful Nova Music Festival is touring the United States. Starting in New York City, the exhibition is now completing a run in Los Angeles before moving on to other cities. Both Phyllis and I were very impressed with the exhibition. And today, our special guest is Anna Cooper, Chief of Staff of the Nova exhibition. Anna, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for making the time to come on.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Anna, could you please share with us the origin story of the exhibit? Who started it and what was the original goal? And has that goal shifted or has it remained the same?
So, Scooter Braun, who is a well-known music executive in the United States, took a trip to Israel last December with a friend of ours, Joe Tepla, who's been instrumental in founding the exhibition itself. And they went to Israel and they made their post-October 7 rounds. They went to the actual site of the Nova Festival, and they went to what were called these sort of healing pop-up camps, which was just a place for survivors to come and gather, be together, and heal, really. And what he saw was a bunch of kids, young kids, who had gone to a music festival and had faced terrorism. And this was something that wasn't new to him, because when he was managing the well-known singer Ariana Grande in 2017, there was a terrorist attack at her concert in Manchester. And after that, I believe it was 22 people who had died. The whole world rallied together. Every major artist quit their plans. And in just 2 weeks, they put on a massive benefit concert in support of the victims of the terror attack. And now here you have over 400 dead at a music festival, and the world did not have that same reaction. So he was angered and confused, obviously, a whole host of things, seeing these kids in Israel. And he wanted to bring this story to the United States.
Right.
And yes, and then what happened?
So I guess that's just the beginning, really. We brought it to New York for 2 months.
No, I think you skipped a thing. So what does it mean to bring this show? There was the actual event and then the amazing exhibit, but there was something in between about this decision to show burnt out cars. I mean, to do the exhibit the way it was done and kind of as pop-up.
So in Israel, it sort of started more as a lost and found, as a place for survivors to come and gather their lost items from the festival itself. And I think it sort of became, I never went to it, but it became more of an installation similar to what you see here with the cars and the items. Again, everything is from the festival itself. Nothing is a duplicate. And when we brought it to New York, it was more robust. It included all of the testimonies that you see, all of the videos of the survivors speaking. That did not exist in the exhibition in Israel. So with a lot of money and a lot of time, it was eventually brought over to New York, where it lasted for 2 months.
And then how did Los Angeles become the next city?
So there was we got a lot of requests from all over. There was a lot of requests to go to DC, just to sort of be in the hub of politics and policymakers. And it was a deliberate decision not to do that. Because I was not involved at the time, wanted to bring it to LA to affect culture. This was more seen as a cultural movement than anything. We didn't want to get involved in politics. We wanted to affect culture. We wanted to show people that this was a music festival, just like you would have gone to. And here's what happened. You know, it wasn't about Israel, it wasn't about Judaism. That was very deliberate. So what other place to sort of tap into the music industry and culture and youth and all that than LA. So that was the reasoning for LA.
Anna, could you describe the visitor exhibit experience, starting with the short film of the festival before 6:29 a.m. on October 7, 2023, on Shabbat and Simchat Torah, and the Jewish Fall Festival, Simchat Torah. So what is the visitor experiencing when he or she comes in?
Mm-hmm. It's a massive exhibition. It's about, I believe, 60,000 square feet just to start. So it starts with about a 7-minute long video that just sort of acquaints you with what the Nova Festival was, what the makeup of the people were, what it meant to the festival goers. These festival goers it's a tribe, you know, our foundation is called the Tribe of Nova, and that's really what it is. It's a community. It's not just a festival. You get to know, it's not such a huge community. You get to know the faces if you go to all these festivals. And it's a community there's a line in that video, in that first 7-minute video, that always sticks with me. It's something like, we wish the world was built off of the like morals of Nova, which are kindness and spreading light and love and joy. And there's a big emphasis on equality and how everyone is sort of one on the dance floor. And it doesn't matter who you are, everyone's just together, united by dancing and by music. So that first video really sort of sets the stage for what the ethos of Nova was. And then in the final 30 seconds, it shows a really eerie clip of when the missiles started, and you hear them start shouting like red alert, red alert, and they turn off the music, and that was 6:29. It's the video of the DJ turning off the music, and that was the beginning of the end, really. So
Can I ask one clarification? Is Nova only in Israel, the festivals?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but this was not the first Nova Festival held in Israel. Is that correct?
No, it was not. I think it was still relatively new. I think they had done a few, but it was also, it only took place in Israel, but it's an international festival. You know, the DJs were from multiple different countries. People flew in from all over the world. I think that really gets lost for some reason. Like when
That's
you
why
go
I asked it.
and you see the wall of all the victims, they're from all over the world. So it had an international presence.
So then, after seeing that opening video, what does the visitor experience after that at the exhibit?
So after that video, you've seen a very positive video be cut short abruptly, and you walk into what's called the attack room. In New York, it was more of a larger space. In LA, sort of by design, it's a hallway, which I really like because you're kind of forced in it. You know, you can't look away, which I think is by design and kind of genius. So it's the attack room. It's what it sounds like. It is super disturbing. It's the most disturbing part of the exhibition. It's the hardest part to walk through, in my opinion. Obviously, everyone has a different opinion. It is footage that Hamas released, by the way. It was nothing that we had to grab from them. They posted it proudly on TikTok, on social media, everywhere. So it's footage from Hamas and body cam footage and all that of the actual beginnings of the attacks on the festival. People running into bomb shelters. it's just that first initial attack. And you sort of walk through it, and as I said, it's a hallway, so you're forced to look in every direction. There's sounds. It's meant to be kind of simulating what went down. So yeah.
I just want to say something to my friends who are afraid to go to the exhibit. You can look as much or as little as you want. So you're not forced to look at this if you don't want to. Except in most cases, you've already seen it on television. I don't mean to trivialize it, but the sentence about the terrorist who called his parents and said, "I killed 10 Jews with my own hands."
Mm-hmm.
We don't see him doing it. We hear it. So it's really not anything so shocking that you wouldn't be able to take it in.
I completely agree. Yeah. When I had gone just as a visitor myself or in New York for the first time, there was a lot that I had already seen, a lot that I hadn't seen by far. But some of those jarring clips that stick with you are ones that I had seen on Instagram or whatever. And we can get into it later, but the point about friends being too nervous to come, my opinion on that has evolved. We can get into it later. But I think it's worth nudging.
That's a polite word, nudging. And then what happens? There's more.
So after that attack room, you walk into this massive open space, and every group asks us if they can have a docent or if they can have someone walk them through. And I always have to explain that it is completely self-guided, and you will understand why the second you step foot in it. You don't want someone walking around with you. It's a personal, intense experience. It's self-explanatory. It's sort of a free-for-all, and you kind of make your way around and watch the videos that you watch and touch the articles of clothing that you want to touch. But it's a big open space, and there's a section about the first section you see is about the sexual assault that took place. There are tents set up everywhere, tents from the actual exhibition. There are porta potties from the festival that are kind of lined up in a certain spot. And you can see the bullet holes through the porta potties. And there's these video testimonies that are all over that large room. So you can go and hear everyone's stories. There's a bar set up with all bottles from the actual festival. It really is just meant to look like the festival. And I didn't go, but it looks like a festival. There's a stage in the background. And then there are these burnt cars, which have become sort of a symbol of the exhibition in a lot of ways, that you can peer into, and they're still the shape of a car, but they are burnt. So.
And then what about the memorials, both for the victims who died that day at the festival? And then I realized why Hirsch, Poland Goldberg, and 5 other people were separate. It's because they had been at the festival, but then they were murdered later. That was took me a minute to understand that. Mm-hmm. And then the pictures of the hostages. Describe that too.
Yeah, so another thing that I'll mention that we didn't have in New York that we added here is a bomb shelter that's part of that larger room. It's just sort of, it's a small room off to the side. You walk in, and it's, again, just like the rest of the exhibition, meant to look like a bomb shelter. And they have 3 videos in there that are particularly challenging, of people's stories that had to do with the bomb shelter, which, as many people know, ended up becoming a death trap at these festivals. People's gut was to go into a bomb shelter. They saw missiles, and then the terrorists shot into them and threw grenades, and it ended up becoming a death trap. So that's a super important part of the exhibition. There's also a lost and found section, and you see lines of shoes, which to many of us is a very poignant reminder of Holocaust museums. That's sort of like, for Jews who've done their research, that's like the image. So it's kind of freaky and
like the shoes of Auschwitz, the shoes of Auschwitz,
right.
piles
It's
of shoes
just
of Auschwitz. Yeah.
totally. It kind of reminds you like there are Holocaust survivors and now there are Nova survivors, you know, and the shoes kind of bring those tragedies together. And we've had survivors come and claim their items, which is to me so wild. A lot of them, they walk in and they find their sweatshirts. Anyway, so then off to the side of that is the memorial wall. And Phyllis, you were saying there are 6 separate ones. Those are for the hostages that were murdered probably about a month ago, maybe more.
Can I say one thing about that? I was so impressed. So it's not just their name and age and picture. It's frequently a little bit about them. And some of those people chose to stay and save others, even though it cost their lives. And that I thought the heroism without, not trumpets but just the quiet heroism is just very compelling.
Yes, and I have heard countless stories of the survivors who are at the exhibition who have told me about their experience at the festival. I mean, people who ran back and forth and saved 60 people, and one of those 60 people saved 100 people. Like, there is just such a sense of togetherness among them, and they take care of each other in a way that I don't see in other countries. It's just, it's really standout. And when you walk around that memorial room and you look at the faces and you read the bios, you see how it's people of all different ages, all different countries and backgrounds. There's a terrible picture of a disabled girl who is in a wheelchair and she went to the festival. It was like her dream to go to a festival. It's just like all different types of people. It's not just like young Israelis. It really wasn't. I mean, of course, it's probably the majority, but they're just from all over the world. So that room I'm there every day, and I can't go into that section. I find that challenging, but I make myself as per what we were saying. And then after that, you walk into a timeline room. It's called the Healing Journey, and you see a timeline of what's happened since October 7th. And that didn't exist in New York because it hadn't happened yet. So that's an addition, and it sort of chronicles the healing journey. What have we done for the survivors since? And there's pictures of them. There's videos of them doing, ice baths and yoga together and therapy. And there's a really, really powerful video of Nova survivors meeting with Holocaust survivors and sort of how can we pull strength from each other. And yeah, it explains a bit more about the Tribe of Nova Foundation, which was established obviously in their honor, to help the survivors and help families rebuild after everything they lost. So that's nearing the end. And then the final room is this video that we didn't have in New York as well. And it is such a powerful video. It shows a concert that happened in Tel Aviv. I believe it was in April, with 30,000 people. A sort of a We Will Dance Again concert, the first concert of its kind since Nova. And you have the DJ, one of the DJs and founders of Nova, Omri Sassi, DJing for 30,000 people in Tel Aviv. And it's just like a really beautiful, triumphant, full circle moment. And I encourage people, that's sort of the last thing that requires your attention in the exhibition. And I really encourage people to just sit and watch it. It's probably 5 minutes.
So what have Nova survivors who've seen the exhibit, what has their response been besides emotional? I mean, do they think it's effective? What have they said to you?
Different things, of course. I think some people have an easier time walking through than others. I've noticed most of them won't go into the attack room for obvious reasons. I think it is very comforting for them to be with a family, you know, like Nova has become their family, and they come here, and this is a building really dedicated to them with people. It feels good to watch people walk around the exhibition learning your story, you know, like they film testimony because they want people to watch it. So I think it's really therapeutic for a lot of them. I've spoken to so many, and after they give testimonies at events, they, not always, of course, but they feel good, you know, like they want to do that, and they feel that they're doing a service to their friends who didn't make it, who can't share their story. And, you know, from my perspective, I watch, for example, this mother who lost both of her daughters. She came and for like a week straight just gave a presentation every day on her daughters, just like a slideshow of photos of their family. And it is really brutal and just awful to listen to. And I think to myself, like, how does she show up here every single day and do it? This just must be agonizing for her. But it is, I'm sure, in so many ways, but it's healing for them, you know, like every day that goes by where they don't speak about them is more agonizing than the opposite. They want to carry out their stories. So I think it's such a challenge, but I think it ultimately feels really good for a lot of them.
Yeah. And what has been some of the public reaction to the exhibit, both positive and maybe negative?
Yeah, it's been all positive in LA, and it was mostly positive in New York. Towards the tail end of New York, we had a massive riot outside of the exhibition that was national news. We locked up the whole exhibition. People were locked inside. And it's an interesting story and an important one to tell, because as awful as it was, I think it was also a very affirming and uniting moment for the team. That, I'll backtrack. The response to the riots were very uniting. You know, you had everyone on every end of the political spectrum and every network on either end of the spectrum coming together, people who have never agreed before, coming together to say, protesting outside of an exhibition about kids who died at a music festival is wrong. You know, like as if it needed to be said, but it was a uniting moment where you had people who never agree. Mm-hmm. So that was the one negative thing that, you know, we spun into something positive. But LA has had no problems, and it's been really amazing. I think we've really hit a stride, and word of mouth is out, and we've gotten a lot of people also with significant followings who can post about it and reach millions of people, you know, and that's how things work in 2024. So it's been positive.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say that we are recording this on October 14th. The exhibit has been extended to October 20th. You can show up without tickets if you're if just a few people, right? But it's much better to get tickets. We'll put the URL. Do you want to say it now? But we'll put it at the end of this. But my tip is take an Uber if you have a hard time walking, because there's almost no parking except in 2 parking lots. They do show it on the exhibit, which are not so close. So take my advice, take an Uber. So, but what I wanted to ask is, what is the most important concept that you wish people would who have seen the exhibit would come away thinking about doing? You know, what's the most important?
Yeah. So after that final video that I was describing that shows that huge concert in Tel Aviv, you walk into what's called the healing room. It's just a large open room where it's sort of loungy, you know, people are invited to just sort of sit and decompress of what they just saw and hang around for a while. You know, I see people hanging there for hours, just chatting with survivors, you know, sitting with a cup of coffee. People really take advantage of the space. And there is a large sign sort of in like LED lights that says "We will dance again," which is, of course, the really the motto of the exhibition. And that's deliberately in the last room, and it's sort of by the door. There you go. That's exactly it. And we want you to leave with that feeling. You know, what you saw is difficult, really difficult, but we want the primary emotion to be uplifting and one of resilience, which is We Will Dance Again. And that's not just coming from me, that is coming from every survivor who has seen unspeakable things that can't even compare to the experience, of course, of being in the exhibition, which is my only experience, thankfully. And they all end their testimonies on an uplifting note of We Will Dance Again. And that is, it is so important for them to leave us with this message, you know, because they are dancing again. They all went to Burning Man. They all go to different festivals, and they are rebuilding their life, and they want to see others help them uplift that, you know? So I think that's the main message. And Scooter Braun, who I mentioned in the beginning, who helped bring this exhibition to the United States, whenever he speaks to people at events at the exhibit, he always ends by saying that he asks that everyone in the room, bring 2 friends, you know, and it sounds like a small ask, and I hope it is, but if everyone in that room could just bring 2 friends, you know, sometimes we have a room of hundreds, you know, that's significant. And it's a call to action, you know, it's not just like, what have you just seen? It's how can I have other people see this? There's a call to action, and it's to bring more people.
That's why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And I just want to say something. The thought that's gone in the exhibit, you know what I noticed in the healing room and the little different groups that you could sit was the boxes of Kleenex. I know that sounds small, but I thought, how thoughtful.
Yeah.
Just those little touches that really show the kind of creativity or imagination that went into this exhibit.
Yeah, definitely.
Anna, where is the exhibit scheduled to go in the future after it has finished in LA, which will be in a week, I think?
Yeah, so we are planning to go to Miami. And then from there, I don't know. I think there's a lot of future plans, but the first stop is Miami.
Miami. Okay. When does it start there?
I think we're aiming for around December, maybe mid to end December. So look out for us there.
So how do people listening to this podcast say, I would love this exhibit in my city? Is there a process, you know, like the Olympics or something, you bid for it? How does it work?
There isn't a formal process. Like there's not like a form online. Well, in our post survey, people get an email after they visited the exhibition. And one of the questions is, where do you want us to go next? So there's an opportunity for you to write it in, but we've gotten just people who have our contacts or people that we've been in touch with. We get a lot of different requests to go abroad, which I think the exhibition does plan to do. So there's need, and people want us, which is great.
And can our listeners do something to get it to their city? Is there something they can do to make that happen or help make that happen?
I mean, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of infrastructure, the right place. We need to make sure it makes sense, you know, market-wise, location. There's a lot of different factors, and I really don't have a part in that. So I don't know if there's much that people can. We have to pick the place first, and then sort of dive into the logistics of it. You know, there's a lot of factors that go into it. I'm just really not that involved in that side of the operations, but yeah.
But if someone had a lot of money, who is there an email contact on the website?
Yeah, I mean, you can email general@novaexhibition.com. That's on the website. It's more than that, you know. There's, of course, the money is necessary, but there's a lot of places where people would pay to go, pay to have us go. That fortunately, we're kind of in a place, I think, where we would be picking a bit, you know. There's a lot of need and a lot of desire to have us in different spots. And it's more than money, you know, it has to make sense.
Okay, so basically, the call to action at the end of this podcast is to have our listeners uh, encourage people to attend in these last days till October 20th, and then in other cities when it appears, to encourage themselves and others to go. But do you have any last thoughts before we end? Anything that you want to say that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can share a bit more about what I was getting at in the beginning about friends that are too nervous to come. I see a lot of that. I have a lot of people tell me, you know, like, I know my limits. It's not for me. I think fine sometimes, but I tend to push a little bit only because I have formed such close relationships with the survivors themselves. And if they can show up every day and share their story and relive their story multiple times a day, then you can come listen to them. You know, I think they want to be heard so badly. They don't want to just, you know, they want to speak to large rooms and touch a lot of different people. And I think we owe it to them to listen to them. So if your friends are hesitant, I think nudge a little bit.
So I just want to clarify when you say they speak, I saw that there was a room. Do they speak at formal times or do they just in the healing room kind of circulate and speak?
Both, both. So you can have, if you come on a group visit, which is over 20 people, or put on an event, which is however many people, you can opt into hearing survivor testimony.
I see. In that room off to the side. So you have
Yeah,
this.
and if you're coming just as an individual and not with a group or an event, there are always survivors who are hanging around the healing room who you could have a conversation with, but that's not like a formal testimony.
Okay, thank you. I wanted that clarification.
So until when is it in LA, this exhibit?
October 20th.
October 20. Okay.
So thank you, Anne, so much for coming on the show. We thank our listeners for tuning in. For those of you who want to know more about Evelyn and myself and our work, you can go to Never Again Is Now podcast at YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And please, as we end every episode, we say, speak up against anti-Semitism and hate, and I will add, and bring the hostages home.